Welcome back to our channel, your ultimate source for the most explosive, jaw-dropping daytime drama updates. Today is a spectacular day to dive deep into the treacherous, unpredictable waters of Port Charles. We have some absolutely massive, game-changing spoilers that will leave you completely breathless. Grab your coffee, lock your doors, and brace yourselves. Because the stakes have never been higher, and the danger has never been this real. Jason Morgan's miraculous return to Port Charles has been the undisputed answer to a million desperate prayers, but those hopeful prayers are about to mutate into an absolute living nightmare. The man walking the streets, wearing that legendary black leather jacket, and flashing that signature stoic stare is a complete and utter fraud. We are looking at the biggest, most sinister deception in recent General Hospital history, and the fallout will shatter the Corinthos family to its very core. The truth is finally bleeding out, and it is infinitely more terrifying than anyone could have possibly imagined. Carly Corinthos was initially on top of the world. When her best friend, her unwavering rock, and her ultimate protector walked back into her life, the sheer relief was palpable across the entire city. The tears she cried were real, the embraces were tight, and for a fleeting, beautiful moment, everything in Port Charles felt perfectly aligned. Sonny had his enforcer back, the children had their uncle, and Carly had the one man who always understood her darkest impulses. But Carly is no fool. She has survived brutal mob wars, terrifying kidnappings, and decades of lethal deception. Her survival instincts are razor sharp, and they were about to be triggered in the most devastating way possible. The cracks in this picture-perfect reunion began to show during what should have been an intimate, nostalgic conversation at the Metro Court. The restaurant was quiet, the ambiance was perfect, and Carly was ready to reconnect with the man who held half of her. But when she brought up highly specific, deeply private memories, moments of shared trauma and triumph that only the real Jason Morgan would ever know, this man drew a complete, chilling blank. He tried to play it off smoothly as trauma, blaming the heavy fog of his mysterious absence and the injuries he's. But Carly's internal alarms were already screaming at maximum volume. The eyes looking back at her were completely vacant of the deep, unspoken warmth they only ever held for her. That single incident at the Metro Court was the ultimate catalyst for a full-blown psychological. Carly could not shake the agonizing, suffocating feeling that an imposter was sitting across from her. Driven by a frantic, volatile mix of desperate hope and sheer, unadulterated terror, she realized she needed undeniable, scientific proof. She could not just wildly accuse the man who looked exactly like Jason Morgan of being a devastating illusion without concrete evidence. The blowback from Sonny alone would be catastrophic. In a classic, high-stakes Carly Corinthos maneuver, she orchestrated a moment of close physical contact, secretly and swiftly securing a hair sample from the man claiming to be her lifelong confidant. The tension during this covert operation was absolutely suffocating. Every ticking second felt like a live bomb waiting to detonate as she rushed the stolen sample to a trusted, off-the-books medical contact to run a rapid, highly classified DNA sequence. The agonizing wait for those DNA results pushed Carly to the absolute brink of her sanity. She paced the hardwood floors of her home, obsessively replaying every single interaction, every spoken word, and every subtle gesture this imposter had made since arriving in town. The subtle differences in his gait, the slight shift in his vocal cadence, the way he held his coffee, it all started adding up to a horrifying conclusion. When the secure, sealed envelope finally landed in her trembling hands, the reality of the situation hit her like a runaway freight. She ripped open the paper, her eyes scanning the complex medical jargon until they landed on the absolute zero probability of a match. The genetic markers were a complete, undeniable mismatch. The man sleeping under her roof, interacting with her vulnerable children, and embedding himself back into the highly volatile Corinthos syndicate was not Jason Morgan. The sheer gravity of this revelation paralyzed her. If this man wasn't Jason, then who in the hell was he? And more importantly, what unspeakable horrors had he inflicted upon the real Jason to steal his entire life? Armed with this explosive, undeniable truth, Carly knew she had to force a massive confrontation immediately. She could not let this unknown monster continue to infiltrate her family's life for another second. She sent a cryptic text summoning him to the absolute most iconic, dangerous location in Port Charles, the docks at midnight. The foggy, dimly lit pier provided the perfect, chilling backdrop for a showdown of epic, life-altering proportions. The air was thick with tension, the sound of the dark, freezing water slapping against the wooden pylons perfectly echoing the frantic, terrified beating of Carly's heart. She stood her ground in the shadows, clutching the crumpled DNA results in her jacket pocket like a lethal weapon, ready to tear down the flawless facade of the man standing before her. When the fake Jason arrived, his motorcycle cutting through the heavy fog, he played the part flawlessly. He dismounted, walking toward her with that trademark feigned concern, asking what was wrong. But Carly did not hold back. She unleashed her fiery fury, hurling the undeniable scientific proof right into his chest. She demanded answers, her voice echoing fiercely across the empty, desolate harbor, fully expecting a frantic denial, a violent fight, or a desperate attempt to flee. What she got instead was infinitely more horrifying than any physical attack. The imposter did not flinch. He did not panic. He did not even attempt to lie. Instead, a slow, deeply sinister, and utterly cold smile crept across his perfectly sculpted face. It was a twisted, sadistic smile that the real Jason Morgan had never, ever made in his entire life. The sheer, concentrated malice radiating from this imposter froze Carly's blood instantly. He looked at her not with the love of a best friend, but with the predatory amusement of a hunter who had just trapped his absolute favorite prey. What happened next belongs in the darkest, most terrifying halls of soap opera history. With agonizing, deliberate slowness, the imposter raised his hands to his jawline. In a moment of pure, unadulterated shock that left Carly gasping for air, he dug his fingers into the edge of his skin and began to forcefully pull. The perfect, lifelike silicone mask, a terrifying masterclass in modern, high-tech disguise technology, began to stretch, distort, and tear away from his real features. Carly stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth as the beloved face of her best friend was literally peeled away to reveal the cold, calculating, and ruthless visage of Cullum. The sheer psychological trauma of watching Jason's face distort and give way to a literal monster will haunt Carly for the rest of her natural life. Cullum did not just reveal his true identity for dramatic, theatrical effect. He did it to establish absolute, unbreakable dominance over her. Standing over a horrified, trembling Carly, he laid out his terrifying, bloodthirsty ultimatum. He had infiltrated Port Charles with one singular, violently obsessive goal: the complete and total annihilation of the entire Corinthos family. But he wasn't going to do it with a simple bullet in the dark. He was going to dismantle them from the inside out, using Jason's trusted face and Jason's unparalleled, unrestricted access to Sonny's criminal empire. Cullum made it violently, brutally clear that if Carly breathed a single, solitary word of this revelation to Sonny, Michael, Jocelyn, or anyone else in Port Charles, he would slaughter them all without a second thought. He detailed exactly how he would do it, proving he had intimate knowledge of their security details, their daily routines, and their greatest vulnerabilities. He held absolutely all the cards, and he was ready to play them with lethal, uncompromising precision. He knew that Carly's greatest weakness was her fierce, protective love for her family, and he weaponized that love to chain her to his dark agenda. Carly is now trapped in the most agonizing, suffocating psychological prison imaginable. She is being actively forced to live a waking, breathing nightmare, playing the role of the thrilled, supportive best friend to a man she knows is a deadly, calculating predator. Every single hug she is forced to endure, every shared cup of coffee at the diner, every strategic conversation about the mob business is laced with lethal, invisible poison. She has to stand by and watch this monster interact with her innocent children, forcing a bright smile through the sheer, paralyzing terror that constantly grips her heart. Cullum is a master manipulator of the highest order, and he is thoroughly, sadistically enjoying torturing Carly. He flaunts his absolute power over her in plain sight, dropping subtle, terrifying hints in public that only she can understand, while the rest of Port Charles remains blissfully, dangerously ignorant of the deadly viper operating in their midst. The implications for Sonny Corinthos are absolutely catastrophic and rapidly approaching a point of no return. Sonny relies on Jason as his ultimate enforcer, his most trusted advisor, and his undisputed brother-in-arms. With Cullum wearing Jason's face, Sonny is completely, hopelessly exposed. Sonny is actively bringing his greatest, most lethal enemy into the most highly classified, vulnerable areas of his massive organization. Cullum is quietly gathering vital intel, learning the secret shipping routes, identifying the structural weaknesses, and preparing to strike a fatal, decapitating blow to the Corinthos syndicate. Carly has to sit in the same room and watch Sonny confide his deepest secrets in this imposter, knowing that every single word Sonny speaks is handing Cullum the exact ammunition he needs to destroy them all. Her total inability to warn Sonny is tearing her soul apart, piece by bloody piece. Cullum's dark vengeance is not just about taking over a lucrative mob territory. It is deeply personal and meticulously, flawlessly crafted. He has studied Jason's subtle mannerisms, his specific vocal cadences, and his legendary combat skills with terrifying, obsessive accuracy. He plans to systematically isolate Sunny from his allies, alienate his family members, and trigger a massive, bloody gang war that will leave the Corinthos legacy in absolute ashes. He is using Carly as his ultimate, impenetrable shield, knowing that her forced silence guarantees his continued, unquestioned access to the throne. The heavy toll this is taking on Carly's mental state simply cannot be overstated. We are witnessing a terrifying masterclass in psychological warfare. Carly is legendary for her explosive temper and her absolute inability to keep a secret when her family is actively threatened, but Cullum has effectively, ruthlessly neutralized her greatest weapon. He whispers dark threats to her in crowded rooms, flashing Jason's stolen face to ensure she remembers the deadly. He forces her to publicly endorse his dangerous decisions to Sunny, making her an unwilling accomplice in the impending destruction of her own family. The sheer, unrelenting anxiety is pushing Carly to the very edge of a total nervous breakdown. Amidst this suffocating daily terror, the ultimate burning question remains brighter and more urgent than ever. Where is the real Jason Morgan? If Cullum went to such extraordinary, expensive lengths to steal his identity, create a flawless silicon mask, and infiltrate his life, then Jason must have been neutralized. But is he dead? In the treacherous world of Port Charles, a physical body is absolutely required for confirmation, and Cullum's utter, arrogant confidence strongly suggests he has Jason locked away in some dark, inescapable hellhole. Carly's only sliver of hope, the only thing keeping her from completely shattering, is the desperate, burning belief that her best friend is still alive out there. The tension is building to an absolutely catastrophic, city-shattering climax. Carly Corinthos is a ticking powder keg, and Cullum is arrogantly playing with matches. She is secretly, desperately working on a highly dangerous counteroffensive, trying to find a loophole to expose Cullum without triggering his lethal contingency plans against her. She needs powerful allies, but she cannot trust anyone without putting a massive, glowing target directly on their back. The clock is ticking, the danger is escalating exponentially by the second, and the final, bloody showdown between Carly, Cullum, and the legacy of Jason Morgan is going to leave Port Charles forever changed. Drop your boldest predictions in the comments below. Who will strike the fatal blow, and who will not survive this explosive massacre?